Hello everyone. Uh, Following the conclusion of my free-to-play series where I basically started a new deck and climbed all the way to Legend, I would actually like to be starting a new Titanfall Assault series, which I'll be calling Titanfall Assault Protocols. So, Titanfall Assault Protocols will be a series focused on the details and core underlying mechanics of Titanfall Assault. I'm doing this to help newer players and hopefully even the more seasoned players understand the core mechanics of what makes Titanfall Assault. Uh, I'm always finding that even though I play this game a lot, I'm still learning something new every day. So actually, it makes me realize that there are actually a lot of things that new players may not be able to grasp, which is why I'm doing this series to so-called help the community get better as a whole. Now I'm going to assume that you've already played the tutorials and already know that the cards in Titanfall Assault that makes your decks are basically the pilots, titans, and burns. So all of them are very different in what they do, but actually most of them, their weapons except for selected very unique few can be actually classified into several weapon groups, which is basically what I would like to discuss in the pilot episode of Titanfall Assault Protocols, which are basically the weapon classes. So to dive right in, the first weapon class that we are going to talk about are the AoE projectiles. Right, before we go on any further, I would actually like to explain more about the types of DPS in Titanfall Assault, or rather the type of damage. You have human damage, which is basically things like the chain gun, the sentry, which these are all things that deal higher human DPS. Humans are cards like Grenadier, Hollow Grenadier, and Boomer. Boomer is also considered a so-called human, but because he has a shield, while the shield is up, he's actually considered a robotic unit. Whereas robotic units are things like Ash, as well as the two titans that you see at the side, BT and Atlas. Spectres also considered it, and Sentries also considered as robotic DPS. Right. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about the AoE projectiles. So think about grenades, rockets. These are basically things with AoE projectile, which means that they have AoE damage upon whatever they hit. Right. So I've only included the pilots that fit into this weapon class. Of course, there are burn cards and even titans that fit into this weapon class, such as rocket guns. The ogre will be a classic titan that also fits into AoE projectile. Right. So given that these cards have AoE projectile, most of the time it means that their damage won't be as high as their single target cousins or other cards that are single target. So as for AoE projectile in general, any single target cards will work well against them. However, you do want to avoid sending low HP troops like grunts or arc drones against them, because their AoE are going to make very quick work of them. Also, if you actually have to attack AoE projectile to minimize the damage taken, it's best to do a flank attack where one pilot or one troop come in from the front and another troop come in from the back. Last but not least, they actually do have a longer interval between their shots compared to their single target cards in the game, which is actually what I'm going to talk about next. These are basically your single target types of pilots. Things like sentries and atlas will fit into this weapon class. Striders will also fit into this weapon class. So in terms of pilots, most of the pilots are single DPS. As their name suggests, they are very focused on damage to a very specific target, which actually makes them, if you are talking about in terms of damage output, they actually have the most damage output if there's only one target. Right. Special mentions about the snipers, because they can only attack one at a time. That's why they fit into the single target. But I'll explain to why the snipers are a little unique in this aspect. So single target, as their name suggests, the way to defeat them is to actually redirect their attempt, whether it's through a technique called bumping, which we'll be explaining more about in another episode of Titanfall Assualt Protocols. Basically to just zerg rush them or swamp them, as they can only attack once at a time, right? So that's where the snipers deserve a special mention, because the snipers are cards that basically once you can place at a specific spot, and they will not run around. They will just stay there and attack any targets within their range, which is very high, as sniper cards as snipers tend to have. So because snipers can be placed in a manner near the turrets, like medium turrets or heavy turrets, they can still engage the enemy, while you cannot swarm them because the heavy turrets or medium turrets will make short work of whatever it is you throw at them. So snipers are a little special in this aspect compared to the other single target DPS cards. Right, last but not least, we have the frontal cone AoE. So this is a little unique. Frontal cone AoE basically just means, like, think of a shotgun, right? The blast radius spreads out like a triangle. Excuse me. So that's basically frontal cone AoE. No, you'll probably be asking, so why is Jack here? Well, because Jack has his melee is actually a frontal cone AoE. So hence the reason why I had to call this whole section frontal cone AoE and not just shotgun, because of Jack. Burn cards that also fall in this aspect will be Reaper Bruiser. His melee now also has a range, which is a frontal cone AoE. This frontal cone AoE means that only the enemies in front of the pilots get damage and not those that are behind, right? So do take note of that. And well, okay, so the frontal cone AoE so-called type of pilots, with the exception of Jack Cooper, which I'll explain why later, they don't really have very long range. As you know, they are all holding shotgun, with the exception of again of Jack. So they actually need to move closer to their target. So to take advantage of that, actually the best way is to use pilots, single DPS pilots, because frontal cone AoE are kind of like AoE pilots. Think of them that way. So using a higher range card, a higher range DPS card, you can actually take advantage of their short range and get in a few more shots as they walk towards you. So as a result, the single target DPS will be good to deal with things like the frontal cone AoE. So these are the three types of classes basically. Oh right, sorry, I forgot to talk about Jack. So Jack has pretty decent range damage. However, his frontal cone AoE, which comes from his melee attack, is single-handedly one of the highest pilot DPS outputs available in the game. So with only the exception of Jack Cooper, actually you may not be able to take advantage even with high range DPS cards, although that helps just a little bit. Right, so to recap, it's kind of like a scissors paper stone formation, where AoE projectile wins swarm type cards, like specters, grunts, arc drones. Single target cards wins AoE projectile mostly, and frontal cone AoE wins against also wins against swarm type kind of thing generally well, but however they can lose out to the single target. So think about frontal cone AoE as like a mix between the true AoE and the single target. They are a little beefier, but they are kind of in between. Okay, so without further ado, we'll actually jump into a few games just to show you how the relationship works between these three weapon classes. So I actually prepared a deck already. Striker will be your single DPS, Stim Bruiser will be your frontal cone, Arc Boomer will be your AoE projectile. Spectres is a like so-called your swarm type of things, which is good against single target but weak against AoE projectile, and to a certain extent weak against frontal cone. Arc drones will also be like in a similar group of class with Spectres. They are basically troops, which their damage falls as more the. Okay, so Spectres actually deploys in group of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Arc drones deploy in group of 3. 1, 2, 3. So if they can die individually, but as they die individually, their damage as a whole drops. So Ogre has a AoE damage. Alright, so how to know if a card has AoE damage, right? If you look at the attack area, cards that has AoE has attack area, where single target DPS does not have attack area. Right, so as you can see, frontal cone AoE damage is a lot lesser than the projectile AoE. Atlas is single target, as you can see. Strider also single target. Sentry single target. Arc drones has although they didn't put it here, it's a AoE as what you expect from mine, right? So what we'll do is actually we will jump into a game just to show you how it works. Do keep in mind that this kind of relationship also works in tandem with robotic and human DPS. So for example, let's say a Steam Bruiser, by right he is supposed to kind of win capture burn cards, right? Like grants and all that. However, if your grants all of a sudden have, for example, let's say we talk about shield grants, or let's say we talk about normal grants, but the buffed with the personal shields, he's gonna have a harder time because his Steam Bruiser deals human type DPS. However, he's now being matched against a robotic type troop, hence that evens out the matchup a bit. Right, so we are fighting a bot.
Alright people, let's show them what we're made of.
Okay, just to show you how the relationship works, I'll open up with Steam Bruiser. And we'll see how he plays. Right, Spectre Captain is a single target DPS. So he's gonna not do very well against Spectres because he doesn't have
Ready for action.
robotic type DPS, but the ghost actually comes in to cover up for him.
Your Titans will be ready in 30 seconds.
Online.
This ghost, as you can see, even though dump, he's running. Right, so as you can see, him being single DPS, but him being robotic, he actually has an advantage.
Coming right up.
Okay, I'm losing here at the moment. Right, so as you can see, he wins the matchup just because this is actually a good example. I'm just going to throw in more reinforcement, but the Arc Boomer will win this setup because these tools are robotic DPS. I mean robotic, but the Arc Boomer has AoE projectile. That's why he's going to win this engagement.
Charlie secure.
Right, the ghost can be kind of considered a single human DPS. So as you can see, she kills the
Bravo secure.
Arc Boomer before he even gets a chance to fire a single shot. Right, so this is single target, so he's gonna wipe out the Steam Bruiser very quickly, as you can see. However, because the Spectre Captain is robotic, even my single target is having a problem dealing with him. So what we'll do is we'll swarm him with other Spectres. Together they should be able to handle him. Right, I'll have to defend C. Okay, again, I'm going to show you just how, because he's single target and he doesn't deal robotic DPS, he completely cannot deal with the arc drones here, in this case. Especially since my overfire pot shots at him as well. Okay, Spectre Captain is incoming. I'll done an arc mine. Oh, he's going for C. So in this case, even though the AoE projectile of Arc Boomer by right loses to single target, it's okay. I'll actually reinforce him with this sentry. Okay, slowly catching up.
Supply is
Oops,
full.
I have a
Give
full
him
supply
everything you've
even,
got.
so I'll just drop some Titans.
We're taking Charlie.
As you can see, the so-called single DPS cards like Ghost doesn't really do well against that. Ghost is not really considered single, but he's more geared towards a single type DPS compared to
Supply
a
meter
range.
is full.
Right, again, this is single DPS. Oops, the Atlas is probably gonna kill him actually. Okay, I'll just drop Arc Mine here.
Just lost Hart.
Supply is full.
You just
Give him
drop.
everything you've got. It's looking good for us. Don't look back.
Arc won't do very well against Ninja because he doesn't have any means of defense. I'm sitting on a lot of supplies at this point, so at this
System control of hardpoint out.
moment I doubt the AI has anything that he can play to turn this around. Just because I can keep throwing whatever I have, just even if the matchup is not very well, I can just overwhelm him with sheer force. So that's the game. So as you can see, very specific matchups. So,
The enemy is taking their toys and going home. Good
he
work.
probably doesn't have a single AoE projectile as well. Same Ninja is kind of considered AoE, but he's not a true AoE projectile, he's a melee AoE. Right, only Rocket Grunts is considered AoE, but even then they didn't manage to see much play. Okay, so as you can see, that's how the matchup works. So you just need to take note that single DPS, because their
Welcome
damage
back,
are more
Commander.
focused
We've got work to
compared
do.
to their counterparts AoE. So even let's say we compare 2 cores and 4 cores, as you can see, even then, even being at 4 cores and the striker being at 2 cores, the single DPS has a much higher compared to even, sorry, the robotics has more robotics DPS in this case compared to his human DPS. So this is probably not a good example. Actually, what we'll do is we'll compare him to, say, the Grenadier. Okay, actually the Grenadier is also not a good example. Maybe the Hollow would be a better example. Yeah, so as you can see, he has a lot higher damage compared to the area damage, even though the Hollow Grenadier is supposedly a better pilot compared to the Striker. But just because his single target and his damage is higher compared to the AoE one, so you need to understand that to take advantage of when you can actually deploy capture troops to contest a point and when can you not do so. Right, so hopefully you have learned something in this series. I'll be sharing more tips and more guides to what makes to make an effective play and Titanfall Assault. Moving on. So hopefully you've learned something new, and I'll catch you again next time. So be sure to stay tuned to the next episode of Titanfall Assualt Protocols, and I'll see you around.